Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. We're doing a little bit different thing here, sitting in a hotel room in Las Vegas, Nevada. We're really going to have complete failures? That's fun. Cool. All right. Hopefully the audio holds and hopefully the everything works the way it's supposed to do. We're going to be doing a show on the road for the next couple days as I kind of explore the SHOT Show space, and hopefully we can give you guys a little bit of a look behind the scenes of what that is. If you've never been to the SHOT Show convention, you're not missing out on a ton other than sore feet and probably dehydration. It's a massive convention of all the different gun dealers, all the different gun gear and parts, and all the sort of accessories that go along with the firearms industry, and it's held in Las Vegas, Nevada once a year. Everybody goes out there, makes a lot of big purchases, so you get to see what's coming up in the world and what's going to be out there and sort of the guns and gear facet. I'm fascinated by it, but also our friends at Silent and some others are going to be here. I'm going to be able to see our advertisers, so I want to check in with them. We're going to kind of just see it. And again, my passion is really about firearms and freedoms that kind of go along that are protected by those firearms. So we'll hopefully be able to kind of give you guys a kind of a clue into what this place looks like. And instead, I'm sitting in this sort of weird room. And that's the way that it works on this day, this Tuesday, January the 20th. Now, I'm going to do a quick survey of some of the stuff that I see that's going on out there. There's clearly an information war that's going and being waged against ICE. I think that broadly speaking, that the online version of it is not as real as what they would like it to believe. But unfortunately, it's also motivating some sort of online soldiers to actually step into the ring and see if they can get actually violent against these guys, to see if they can actually bring some of that online anger and energy into the space where they're going to come after it. And I do think that we're hearing messaging over and over again about civil war, and it's broader and getting more and more, I don't know, aggressive. It's also always by people who are never going to actually physically get into the war that they are asking for. So let's talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about a piece of foreign policy, not so much that I think that this is something I talk about, but it's normalizing discussion, and we're seeing this sort of massive contrast about whether or not Donald Trump is completely a buffoon, which is kind of like one side says, or whether or not the things he's doing are generally reasonable, even if he did or didn't exactly say it. You'll see that I've got a clip from Ben Shapiro that's going to say that he thinks that the things are going really well and Donald Trump is not as aggressive as he wants. Like, this is kind of the separation between sort of the conservative incorporated and the MAGA type, or the America First folks who are expecting something a little bit different, a little bit more America focused. We just want to be kind of aware of those things being discussed, and we're also going to be aware of the fact that there's a really high probability that you can get scammed in 2026. I'm aware of this as I'm flying. I see people leaving their equipment, or their, what do you call them? They're leaving their ticket stubs places. You're leaving your name, your phone number, you're leaving your address maybe. The little tag pops off your luggage. Yeah, that's all small potatoes compared to some of the really bad stuff that people are doing, which is that they're using things like voice fakes and AIs, and they're stealing your data and posting it all over the place on the web to be able to take money from you or to extort the companies that had the stuff. In 2025, we saw a turning point to threats to privacy, and security became more powerful, more precise. They became harder to stop because of the advent of AI and voice cloning and being able to spoof texts and phone numbers. If you guys are interested in protecting your net worth, if you're interested in protecting whatever it is that you had, whatever you've clawed together over your lifetime, you don't want your bank accounts emptied, you don't want someone to come and steal your title, your house, or all the other kind of things. A lot of ways they do it is by finding out who you are in the first place. They search like everybody else does anytime they're looking for something. They look online. The folks over at Patriot Protect, it's patriot-protect.com/KYLE, will give you 15% off using my name as a promo code, and they want to help you keep your name, your address, your phone number, your family members, the age of all the folks that live with you, even your online behavior and some of the things that you're doing, where you're going, and what kind of stuff you're interested in. They want to keep that away from the scammers, and they do that by removing your name and your information from these 200 plus people search data broker websites. Whenever I want to go find somebody, and whenever I used to do it as a federal agent, it was almost amazing to me how much of it is available in these weird, no-name, kind of Chinese-looking sites. And they would have all kinds of incredible stuff, and you don't even have to pay for it if you know what you're doing. If you do pay for it, you can get more of it. There are hundreds of millions of Americans. Almost everybody is exposed at some level. So if you want to have yourself taken out of the pile so that people are not looking to take your stuff, check out my friends at Patriot Protect. It's very inexpensive. It's like dollars per month. And the hope is that it keeps you from hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars in fraud on any given year. So check them out. And we're going to get into today's program starting right now. As usual, there's a link in the show description. Here we go. It's kind of interesting because I had to get up quite early. I actually got up about 3:45 local time here, which is kind of awful to do. And I went down wandering into the casino floor where I could get some internet connection, pull today's clips, and be able to put this stuff together. And I saw the exact opposite of the sort of America that I want to live in. But it is an indicator that things are still going swimmingly for some people. I saw a handful of men walking in with even more women than were men, with their in various states of disarray. It looked drunk. And it's like, man, there are some people that are living a very, very different life than me. I'm not necessarily worried about what those people are about. They're always going to make decisions that are not mine. What I am worried about is the majority and the dominant culture. And right now, there are two pushes, and they are not just pushes against the people that are doing ICE. By the way, the folks that are doing the ICE enforcement, a lot of Border Patrol and Customs and agents that are working for these agencies, they're Hispanic because they speak Spanish and that's required, or it's really helpful. But the people that we have volunteering from the other federal agencies to step up, they're overwhelmingly police officers and white males, which, by the way, is still probably one of the biggest dominant sections of the workforce. So I do want people to be aware that even though you hear a lot of things online, we're gonna play some and try to debunk some of them as well. Just because there's a rattling online presence discussing something, it doesn't mean that it's actually the case. It doesn't mean that if you're not seeing something happen about, let's say, what ICE is doing, that doesn't mean that they're actually advertising all of that information. They've apparently, as we talked about yesterday, got 3,000 people in Minneapolis. That's not very many. But how many of those have you seen arrested? Versus how much coverage have you seen of a lesbian woman sitting in her car who may or may not have tried to run one of the ICE agents over getting shot? The imbalance is very, very high. So it's worthwhile looking at these things and seeing just how the shaping of what you consume changes what you believe is actually going on. That's particularly true when we start talking about our friends on the political left. And this is about as far left as it is. I got friends that regularly update me with what's going on terrestrial radio from NPR. I don't spend time in a car anymore the way I used to. So looking at something like this is always kind of shocking to me that you're selling this. Donald Trump is apparently dismantling the existing world order, if you believe the article coming from NPR. That's kind of a strong claim. They've got a picture of Nicolas Maduro, who I think the left and the right has historically sort of said was a problematic guy. And then they immediately go into a celebration of Harry Truman and the creation of NATO. It's a pretty bizarre take. Because at this point, I don't know how you even defend the fact that there is a NATO. There are people in the conservative movement that would do it, and there are obviously people on the left that are now stepping up for it because of Ukraine. But it's a system that seems to have outlived its purpose. In fact, when Truman instituted it and was speaking at the founding in 1949, this is what they quote him saying: "In this treaty, we seek to establish freedom from aggression and from the use of force in the North Atlantic community." This was about the Russians. This was specifically about the Soviets at that time. If the threat no longer exists, why does the alliance continue? I think that kind of question is what the America First people are asking. I think people that are looking and saying, when do we get to focus on the things that happen in America? When do we get to worry about the dominant culture in America and whether or not we have the freedoms that we expect to have? Do we even have the freedom to speak? Do we have the freedom to have controversial ideas? What the hell do we care about what's going on in NATO? It's an interesting little kind of conversation back and forth with Ben Shapiro and Gavin Newsom. And one of the info ops that I see is normalizing these radical liars, like the guy who's the governor of California. I played you really great evidence of it. He doesn't just lie. He lies with a straight face. He lies with a convincing tone, and he can immediately abandon any position that he held previously. And he never once thinks twice. He never feels any shame about it, from what we could tell. Kind of that Gavin Newsom always has the the Pat Bateman kind of thing. And people look at him as like American Psycho, kind of clean face, empty eyes. There's an idea of a Gavin Newsom, but there's no real Gavin Newsom. Listen to this little conversation back and forth between them. And then again, the contrasting piece of it is dismantling. Hold on, let me get the headline again from the folks over at NPR. Dismantling the existing world order. I don't know how you sell these two. How did two people that have such contrasting ideas, whoever wrote this and Ben Shapiro, how can you even exist in the same information sphere?
On foreign policy, which you put it to the side, I think Trump has been the greatest foreign policy president in my lifetime. I don't think it's close. I think he's been spectacular on foreign policy, and that's with many of my critiques with regard to, for example, Ukraine, where I'm significantly more hawkish than the administration has been.
And did you feel that way in his first term?
Yes.
I thought the same way too.
Yes, I was very much an advocate of his foreign policy. I thought that in terms of his foreign policy, he is, as he said before, he has not got us into any major wars, which is a good thing.
We've used the military 6-7 significant times.
He has used the military in, I think, targeted and pinpointed ways that do not reinforce the Iraq War syndrome that we need to put hundreds of thousands of troops on the ground. I think the president has a very good feel for the thing about foreign policy is it kind of works like the New York real estate market. It actually is a sort of zero-sum win or lose game. And President Trump actually is quite good at those. And I think that on domestic economics, the president tends to bring a zero-sum approach sometimes to his economic issues that I don't agree with, because I think that you can expand the pie for everybody. But I don't think the same thing holds true generally in foreign policy, where when it comes to geopolitics, there's a winner and there's a loser. And it's all about relative power and power dynamics. And the president seems to get that on a very gut level, which is why in the Middle East, I think he did the right thing with Gaza. I think he's done the right thing with the Iran strike on Fordo nuclear facility. I think he did the right thing in extraditing Nicolas Maduro. I think those are all good things. I think that he has found ways to continue the funding of Ukraine via this sort of jerry-rigged NATO buying weapons and funding. I think that he has gotten a bunch of countries in Europe to increase their defense spending, which is something that even Mark Rutte over at NATO has said is generally a good thing.
Okay, fair enough. So we can take that at face value. I like listening to people that I don't necessarily agree with on everything and see, is there value there? My issue has never been whether or not we have that going on, whether or not Donald Trump is doing a great job, whether it is a zero-sum game in foreign politics. Maybe it is. It's not my forte. What I know is that I wasn't being messaged that this was what was going on. We were being messaged, especially even early on, that there were certain things that were going to be massive priorities of this administration, and then we're not seeing those. So for me, the America First agenda, it's like, fine, great, solve the problems overseas, go get the guy, you want to go grab Maduro. I think it's problematic. I think that it's a constitutional issue. It doesn't mean he's the first one to have done it. But how does that fit into the America First agenda that I was told that we were going to solve problems here first? Have we corrected the real problems of whether or not our DOJ is going to go after people who are rigging elections, whether we're going to go after people who are, mandating illegal things on a population? Did we ever get any justice for what happened during COVID? The bacon cheeseburger nationalist position is like, it's great that you want to pick up a fight with folks over in Greenland, and you want to tell Denmark that they've got to solve certain problems for us. My concern is what does that have to do with justice in America when we have people that are on the streets telling you that they are at war with your government? I mean, forget the foreign wars. If you want to be the president of peace, we need to have some things solved here. And some of those means a hard hand. The government doesn't have a monopoly on violence at this point. We don't have that monopoly living in the state. We now have people stepping in and doing all kinds of wild stuff. Whether or not there's going to be any reaction to it is really the question. There's a massive concern on whether we're going to actually see our government claim the territory that it's supposed to be doing. And you've got crazy former GOP members messaging that they're at war with our government and asking people to step into the war with them. This is Joe Walsh. I have no instinct that Joe Walsh is going to join any war, but he's motivating certain people to move that way. And it's all based on the same stuff that we saw in 2020, because we never actually solved those problems, whether it be election fraud, whether it be COVID injustices. They never got addressed. And I would think that before we start worrying about whether we're going to dismantle NATO, which sounds great to me, by the way, it doesn't sound like it's happening, but it'd be good if it did. We're not getting that promise delivered first, which is what I took America First to mean, that we were going to solve our problems at home. Here's Joe Walsh telling you, let's go to war.
Democrats, please wake the fuck up and meet this fucking moment. Congressional Democrats, shut the government down until those masked federal thugs are off of our streets. How about that? How about, Democrats, just that? You've got to vote to keep the government funded by the end of January. How about you don't keep the government funded until these masked federal thugs that are brutalizing citizens and immigrants alike are off of our streets? How about, Democrats, you just do that?
I mean, he's sort of pointing out the fact that the issue is in Congress. I sort of like that. But what you're also seeing is this heated rhetoric where people are getting more and more amped up about something that I don't think is realistic. It's not even happening. Look at this. This is a great example of how the information narrative is being waged right now. This is a story about an ICE detainee. Look how they use the words presumed suicide. And they do so in sort of little air quotes, discrediting quotations. A man being held in a tent complex at the U.S. Army's Fort Bliss base. This is where we had all those folks that were being held from Afghanistan when I was out there. You guys have seen video of it here, I think. If you've watched this program long enough, you have. ICE detainee dies of presumed suicide. This is the second one that I've seen messaged this way. And what they'll do on these stories is not tell you anything about the actual suicide or why that is, or why they're putting the terms presumed suicide in quotes. Victor Manuel Diaz, 36, Nicaragua, died of presumed suicide on January 14th at the Camp East Montana sprawling tent complex at the U.S. Army's Fort Bliss base in El Paso, Texas. The cause of death remains under investigation, although they're presuming suicide, apparently. ICE said that he entered illegally into the country. 24. Immigration judge ordered him removed in August of 2025. He's been in federal custody since January 6th, when they encountered him in Minnesota. So now we're going back to Minneapolis. And he was part of the ICE immigration crackdown. He was arrested for an immigration violation and then processed the final order of removal January 12th. 2 days later, they found him unconscious and unresponsive in his room. He was pronounced dead following life-saving measures and on-site medical staff. Okay? They're acting like there was no reason to understand what was happening. But this is the second story that I've read like this, where the previous story, there was a guy who was experiencing a medical distress. They left him in his room and they found him hanging from his own sheet. They didn't say why he's presumed suicide, but the odds are is that there was something that actually indicated suicide. So they're crafting this narrative to be able to tell you something that looks troubling on the onset. It looks as though it's not actually a suicide. There's actually people doing really ugly stuff. And that's what we're getting. We're getting this messaging, which is getting people inflamed and starting to take action. Again, I think it's interesting that we're normalizing a Gavin Newsom conversation with Ben Shapiro, but we can't even have a conversation with people that are in our own neighborhood that may have a different opinion. You can easily imagine people losing their minds. I was very careful about it when I was flying on the airport the other day. It's like, I don't know who believes what and what's going to cause these people to lose their mind. I've watched all the unhinged videos that you guys have. Some of them look like they're taking actions. This is what happened in Portland the other day. It looks like there's these ambush-style attacks. This is the same stuff we saw in 2020, where somebody would get lured in with a certain kind of, call for distress or a call for police service, and then they would be ambushed. And we've seen this happen to ICE officers as well. This is a troubling thing when the state no longer has a monopoly on violence.
Shortly after 8 o'clock this evening, officers got a threats with a knife call. After officers arrived on scene, 2 officers were struck by gunfire. The officers were brought to a local hospital where they're in stable condition recovering. The suspect is outstanding right now, so we have the area closed off. It's going to be closed off for a while while our CERT team's here. We continue to do our investigation. We ask that residents stay in place.
Stay in place. That's a bad cut, isn't it? I keep seeing over and over again things that indicate that it's not just the left that's concerned about whether or not the police are the good guys. And by the way, this is also unresolved from 2020. This story is something that keeps popping up. It seems like CBS News has run this more than once. New video contradicting Border Patrol account of a shooting in Chicago. This is a woman who was, Miramar Martinez. We actually played clips of her back when this happened. She was driving and she decided to follow a vehicle on the road that had no plates, had lights under the window that looked like it was a Lyft driver. And then, of course, the driver was wearing green because this was an ICE operation. And she decided it was her job to notify people in the area that this was La Migra. She was going to let them know that immigration enforcement were out there. She's a first-generation Mexican-American. So her responsibility is not to her own safety. It's certainly not to just minding her own business. She thought she was going to go out there and highlight these people. And who knows what sort of sensitive operation they were involved in. And you're getting a bunch of sympathy because she got shot after some sort of conflicting conflict that happened there. They claim that she rammed the vehicle. There's some video that says she didn't. It's hard to say. Again, I told you guys previously, federal use of force is not the same as local use of force. And people have this conflated idea that somehow that there's going to be de-escalation, there's going to be sort of the spectrum. These ICE officers are doing planned operations. They're doing things that are very specific. And they know generally who they're going to encounter. And when someone shows up and gets themselves involved with, they may get sort of the wires crossed. The difference is the public doesn't know this. This video from this man talking about who is and who is not getting rounded up is probably the biggest messaging victory for the political left to get people riled up. It's also really dangerous because I've talked to guys that are out being on these ICE operations. They're out doing the job that they're meant to do. They're targeting the folks that they can. Doesn't mean they don't get targets of opportunity or what they call collaterals, but they're going after specific gang members. They're going after drug dealers. They're going after, prioritized targets. That's not just completely random. But if you happen to be in the area, you're going to get grabbed. That's not what people like this woman, Marina Martinez, think is happening, because it's not like you go out there and advertise all of the people that you've arrested today, and you don't see, at least any sort of news coverage I'm seeing, is not showing, oh, well, we've got 5 different these types of drug dealers, or we brought in this number of convicted child sex traffickers, we brought in this. They're not giving those numbers out, and nor should they necessarily. It's just they're doing the business of what ICE has always done, working in the background. Suddenly people are aware of it. And just like they became experts on COVID and virology, and just like people became election, machine experts in 2020, I just see that we're having pop-up expertise from people who know nothing. And people get a lot of their news from TikTok, like this guy. And so this sounds like it might be reasonable. You go, oh, I also haven't heard that. It doesn't mean that that's what's happening.
Listen up close, because this is controversial. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I have not seen one video of ICE arresting any gang members. I have not seen one video of them arresting any drug dealers, any sex traffickers. I haven't even seen them seize any large drug shipments or breaking up any drug labs. I haven't seen any of that. All I have seen is them arresting Walmart workers, Target workers, random passersby on the street who fit the description, breaking up landscaping jobs and labor situations, separating women from their children, killing people. I've yet to see them one time affect the mission in which we were told they're going to be coming to these streets for. They just rousting homeless people and folks that look like they fit the description.
I mean, that would be true. But how many times do you see the FBI taking down these things? How many times do you see the DEA doing the job that the DEA does every single day? It's weird to watch somebody think that they have a monopoly on knowledge. And he's just said, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, you're wrong. Of course you're wrong. What you're seeing, though, is specific news coverage. This is where the information battle's happening. U.S. citizen shares fear that he felt when ICE took him from his Minnesota home nearly naked. Yeah, that's traumatic. By the way, I've taken a lot of people, almost everybody that gets taken out in the first thing in the morning, they're almost all naked. I don't know why that's a thing, but being a federal law enforcement officer, you basically experience that regularly. You're going to take people out into custody, and they're almost always wearing almost nothing, because we go there at 6 a.m. when people are still in bed with whatever they wear to bed. This guy was a Hmong man, born in Laos, naturalized a U.S. citizen. He was returned home without explanation or apology. I don't really know. I mean, first of all, we don't know what the apology is. Are they looking for like a written apology? This isn't how these operations work. If you're in a place where they think somebody is, they're going to go in there. This happens all the time. Unfortunately, the nature of the government having the monopoly on violence is that we're going to go out there and we're going to grab places. We're going to go into homes. Sometimes you don't know why that you're even involved in the sweep. We would go into homes of grandparents who had grandchildren that were involved in, let's say, distribution of PCP or child pornography, or take your pick. And your address is somehow associated with the search warrant. In this case, maybe they went into the wrong house. Maybe they blew it. Maybe they do owe the man apologies. Or maybe there's someone that lives there. And when I read this, it's like they broke the door. They were trying to figure out how to fix it. They're going into all the sort of emotional piece of it that gets this guy on TikTok riled up. But ICE is not supposed to break up drug labs. It's just supposed to go find people that don't belong in this country and deport them. Criminal aliens. The other stuff is being done by the other agencies. But they're not being covered in the same way. All I see is this nonstop attempt to demonize specific federal law enforcement because they found a purchase where they can actually get people really riled up. And it always ends up at the same spot. It always ends up in this like aggressive sort of like racist push. Local cops are paying the price. People are getting shot. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the reality of what the situation looks like on the ground. Having talked to people that are actually out there doing it, it doesn't help that these guys are not in prison for the stuff that they've done that are actual federal felonies. And you don't need that much time. I'm going to give you guys another comparison. Did we not go through January 6th and all the things that happened on January 6th? Didn't we see that there was an easy way to get completely riled up, have the entire federal government turn, and bring people into custody? I feel like we did. I feel like that was the thing. So they're not done with it over on the political left either. Check this out. This is a CBS News story. This is from Scott McFarlane. And he focuses on January 6th as one of his beats. But isn't it interesting that every single time one of these folks of the 1,600 or whatever it was pardoned J6ers finds themselves in legal trouble, and that doesn't matter whether it's a Jake Lang or this guy, Andrew Johnson, he was pardoned. Like everyone, Donald Trump didn't go line by line and pardon these people. But this guy is going to be charged on child molestation charges in following an arrest that he had in July. So this is an old story. It's being rehashed. He was accused of molesting a victim for months in Hernando County, Florida, and he's held in custody. He's got a trial coming up in February the 9th. We want to point out all of the wrongdoings of the people there. No one ever said that all the J6ers were good people, or even the people that got convicted shouldn't have gotten what they got. Some people certainly could. I think Jake Lang is a great example of that. Swinging a bat at cops is a really good reason to go to prison. The J6 prosecutions represented an overreach of federal authority. It represented the federal government doing the exact opposite thing of what it should have been doing. Instead of caring about fair process, what they cared about was outcomes. And so the entirety of it got rebuked. Here's the crazy thing. They all still work there. So what are we seeing? Are they solving the problems? Are they going after these guys who are doing things that are, I think, probably as bad or worse? No. You've got this is the same guy that interrupted the church the other day, and he's proud of it. He's pleased with himself. I'm going to show you some really bizarre videos of these folks, and they're getting massively amplified. And guess what? When you don't go to prison for doing things that are obviously bad, then you turn into a folk hero for some of the actual radicals that will continue to join them.
To the local Somali mosque, and as you can see how beautiful it is, this is where they do their prayer. This is where normally 500 people will come and make prayer, but things are quiet because the local community is scared to come out. They're terrified. It was an honor to be invited to this mosque, but it was surreal to be there, and it made me feel good about my actions in that white supremacist church earlier. How can these people be not afraid to go out of their homes, afraid to go practice their prayer, while these rich white people can live like nothing's happening and ignore it completely? It's unjust. It's un-American. What is freedom if it only applies to white people?
This is the first neighborhood that ICE targeted, see the riverside.
Gotcha.
Approximately 8,000 to 10,000 Somalians live here.
And you said this was one of the first Somali mosques? This is the
first mosque. Imam Shafi'i.
Okay, got you.
Intersection, see the riverside, West Bank, right next to the University of Minnesota.
Gotcha. And we just thank you for having us here today. We're very grateful, and we won't forget about your community.
You guys traveling and fighting for the right cause. We really appreciate you guys coming to the Twin Cities. Thank you, Jolly. Thank you, the Walk Farmer.
Thank you, thank you. So we've been invited by some Somali elders to come eat some of their beautiful food. Look at that.
Oh God, dude, this is gonna be so good.
Look at that. Please go check out this restaurant we ate at tonight. It was freaking delicious. Just.
What on earth are we even doing in this country? Like, who are these crazy people that are getting the voice? We need to know that they're out there. We need to understand that they're doing it, and they're actually marketing it to people who think that they're on the side of right. They're not the majority of this country. They're not even close. There's a fractional minority. All Muslims, not even Somalis, all Muslims make up about 1.5% of the United States population. Similar to Hindus, who are a little bit less, somewhere between like 1 and 1.5. Jewish people who have been here forever. Jewish people represent religiously 2.5% of this nation. And so we still have a majority of people in this country that either are Christian, 60%, or they have Christian values and they live that way, which I would say is the remainder of people. There's a very small number of fringe lunatics like this guy who are going to go out and talk about making prayer in a Somali mosque. But look what we highlight about it. And it's being sold as virtue. And that's what's really crazy to me. This is the scariest part of it. So your government, which is meant to protect the majority, which is meant to protect the dominant culture, they're majoring in the minors. I'm going to show you that there's this like new outrage about whether or not they're going to go out there. Whether the FACE Act is going to be, whether it's going to be enforced, as we talked about yesterday. And I think it's clear. I've got a couple of Don Lemon clips we'll play in a second here to do that too. It looks really obvious to me that that's what we're dealing with. You've got the state attorney general in Minnesota saying the exact opposite, saying the craziest thing possible, that this is a First Amendment right to go in and disrupt a church. How many people can you imagine going into that mosque that you just saw, Da Woke Farmer, by the way, D-A Woke Farmer, that's his handle. How many people would walk in there and think that they would not immediately be scooped up by local authorities and then also probably charged federally? And the reason is because the same people who were standing by when George Floyd riots were happening, the same people who went after Christians that were sitting outside of abortion clinics, they all still work for DOJ. It doesn't matter if you change the top. Bondi doesn't seem to be all that action-oriented. We've got Harmeet Dillon coming out and saying that we're going to go after them for potential conspiracy against rights, and so you end up in a federal felony place, your first action against the FACE Act. But who are you going to get to do it? The people you're going to get to do it are the people that you've been making war against for quite a while now. This is that crazy woman, Jennifer Welch. And I do say she's a little bit crazy because she continues to say things more and more aggressive. She kind of gives me this like Candace Owen vibes, where she's going to say whatever's the most outrageous thing to get audience going because it's getting an emotional reaction from people, even though it represents a minority opinion. Apparently, if you go to an evangelical church, you're a white supremacist or a white nationalist.
So that is one of those white evangelical churches that turn out to vote for Donald Trump, 80+% of that sect of Christianity. These are the, don't tread on me, folks. These are the people who feel like America is for Americans and American only. These are white nationalists. And the DOJ got their panties in a wad because these protesters went straight to them and addressed their hypocrisy. You, a gay Black journalist, are, prime bait for them to drum up these charges. But so that's one issue. You went right into the most entitled white nationalists there are, and they feel that ICE is 100% justified. But second,
ICE is 100% justified because ICE is doing what ICE is supposed to do. They're going after people that are here in this country illegally. This story's from NBC News. The DOJ civil rights chief, this is Harmeet Dillon, blasting Don Lemon for covering an anti-ICE protest from inside the church and vows charges against the protesters. Nobody should think in the United States that they're going to be able to get away with this after anti-ICE protesters halted a Sunday service in a St. Paul's church. Well, here's the reason why they think they should and why they think they can. It's because they did. And it's because they're being messaged this way. And you haven't changed the personnel who allowed this stuff. FACE Act violations, broadly speaking, 95% of the time, are only prosecuted against people who are Christians sitting outside of abortion clinics, usually with an overreach of what that law actually entails. We've put people in prison over this regularly. But churches were stomped. I had an article up. Catholic Vote was keeping track of them until they stopped. My friends over at Catholic Vote were giving 500 churches and crisis pregnancy centers were vandalized or destroyed in some way, shape, or form from 2020 onward. Did DOJ aggressively go back and start announcing that they were going after these things? Granted, they don't always tell you when they've gone after something historically, but I went and looked and I couldn't see that any of these things were closed, and we were told they got away with it because it was dark. It's hard to find people outside. Harmeet Dillon is saying the right things about maybe stepping up and doing this. And the problem is that the guy is getting cheered on by the Jennifer Welch, the media types, the new media, and also from people inside state law enforcement like Keith Ellison. So Democrat operatives are telling you that what they did was fine. This was totally acceptable. Here is Harmeet laying out the case against what she thinks can happen. My worry is that this is always going to be the same sort of we're talking, and therefore that is the action. The Trump administration is really good about going out and messaging. They're not always great with follow through, and this is the big concern because this can happen.
It broke my heart. These are scenes out of another era and another place. They are not American scenes. They have no place in America. This conduct is illegal under federal law. A predicate act of a violation of the FACE Act can actually become a federal felony conspiracy under Section 241 is what we call it, of the Klan Act. And so that is definitely something we're looking at as well. And there may be other collateral offenses too.
Great. So there's some potential for felony charges. What are they saying on the other side? What's the other side saying? Do they agree that it exists? No, they do not. In fact, they're defending it. They're claiming there's a 1A right to go in and stop a church. But do these people think the same thing about a mosque? Do they think the same thing about a synagogue?
And the FACE Act, by the way, is designed to protect the rights of people seeking their reproductive rights to be protected, and so that people, for a religious reason, cannot just use religion to break into women's reproductive health centers, right? So how they are stretching either of these laws to apply to people who protested in a church over the behavior or the perceived behavior of a religious leader is beyond me.
Tracking. Got it. Yeah. So there's no protection if you're in a church because it's really meant to do something else. That's the Attorney General for Minnesota. He did the same thing on CNN.
Do with whether they're going to focus or investigate you. So I wish in a normal time I would say no. I say this is First Amendment activity. In time like this, it's just really difficult to say because the only one thing is clear: if Trump likes you, you can do no wrong. If he doesn't, he's going to use every weapon he can against you, including our criminal justice system.
Well, that's probably true, but the issue that I think people that are struggling with is whether or not it has anything to do with whether or not it's actually a violation of law, because there's plenty of things that are violations of law and we don't see any actions. We've been seeing this for a long time. This is the overwhelming drumbeat of the so-called malcontents or the black pillars that we got criticized about being. Do something. I look on social media every day. The expectation that nothing will happen is very high. If you guys see my social media over the next couple of days, I'm going to, again, say I think nothing is going to happen. Part of it is because I'm actually hoping to shame these people into doing something. Wouldn't it be nice if they actually stepped up and did the thing that they said they would do? That's kind of my hope, that we can actually shame them into moving forward. Because there still is a contingent that says these people are not victims, they're actually the aggressor, and there's enough soft, squishy people in the middle that haven't really picked up a side, but they've internalized the mainstream position that because you are... There goes my soundboard for a second. The mainstream position holds that because you are white, you're the issue. And it doesn't help that the lovely ladies on The View are pushing that forward. I'm going to show you this real quickly, and then we're going to go into kind of our final little thoughts and why I think this still matters. Broadly speaking, why we don't have a ton of faith that our law enforcement's going to do the thing they're supposed to do.
I think equality feels much like oppression. when you have always had the privilege of being ahead, even if you were mediocre. And I think that's what we're talking about here. White men as of 2023 were 76% of the workforce, and in all sort of top positions where people of color and women were not. And so what we're learning, I think, from this interview is that this administration kept on talking about a meritocracy and that things should be merit-based, and they felt that it never was. Now we really know that this attack against diversity, equity, and inclusion is based on white male grievance, and the fact that Donald Trump seems to really believe in the concept of reverse discrimination. And the NAACP made it very clear after hearing his comments that in fact there is absolutely no evidence, no fact-based evidence that white men have suffered because of the Civil Rights Act.
Oh. Yeah. Well, white people still...
So that is one of those white evangelical churches that
white evangelical churches, the things that we're going to say that it's okay to victimize certain people because they're not in the favored group. I did the math on it. White people still represent 3/4 of the workforce in the United States. So the idea that they would be in charge of more things or they would have more senior positions in companies, I have no idea why that's even remotely controversial. Unless your whole thing is to stew up outrage. And again, this is that Jennifer Welch doing the same exact thing. What is her point? Her point is that we're going to stir up outrage because these people, with no evidence, by the way, does she give any examples of like, well, look, these are some of the speeches that have been given in that church. These are some of the sermons that have been going on. This is how they advocate for separatism and so on. No. She just says, broadly speaking, if you're an evangelical American and you happen to vote for Donald Trump, by the way, that's where she ties it together. Your vote for Donald Trump makes you an acceptable target. And so you should experience no social civil rights. You should not have them defended.
So that is one of those white evangelical churches that turn out to vote for Donald Trump, 80+% of that sect of Christianity. These are the don't tread on me folks. These are the people who feel like America is for Americans and American only. These are white nationalists. And the DOJ got
zero evidence. Zero evidence. Nothing that she said there was based on anything factual. It's just her feelings. Sounds great. What about those of us that actually had some facts on our side? We asked some serious questions and we never had accountability. The interesting thing about being on the left is as long as you're going down the middle of like whatever it is that they're interested in selling you, and this Jennifer Welch sells like whatever the mainstream emotional feelings are with zero fact base. What about those of us that actually had some facts? And we had all of like, I don't know, scientific history on our side. What happened when we started asking questions? We said, hey, I think that we'd like to continue to have our jobs. And we don't want to have to do things that are against our religious principles or maybe our medical decisions. We don't want to make them based on what you guys say. You need to have facts then. And even if you did, it wasn't good enough. Here's Brett Weinstein asking a question that I've encouraged you guys to ask. It's funny to see people do this sort of stuff. When did you stop getting the COVID boosters was the question. I'm going to send this to my mother-in-law. Maybe she'll see it this way too. Some of you need to be sharing this clip to some folks. It's been obvious to us that natural immunity was an option. Just like it's obvious to us that when you have the majority of the culture, then you should have probably the majority of the senior leadership jobs. And that when you have the majority of the religious bloc in this country, that you should experience the majority of the protections of the state. It just turns out that's not what happens.
Are you still getting COVID boosters?
No.
You're not? Why not?
Well, I've already had COVID a couple times, so I have natural immunity.
Oh, so you believe in natural immunity?
Well, after
the entire public health apparatus assured us that natural immunity was not good enough and that you still got a benefit from the vaccines.
They got it wrong. Look, Brett, they got many things wrong.
Do you remember that moment in time?
I do.
And do you remember people like me shouting about this?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Yeah. So now we find out from Paul Offit that all of the major players gathered together and privately understood the very same thing that they were gaslighting us over. They understood that natural immunity was the best immunity that you were going to come by and that a vaccine wasn't going to augment it. And they decided to keep that to themselves in spite of the fact that these vaccines are built on a novel technology they didn't know the hazards of at best. So how is it that these people can privately meet and decide there's a whole swath, millions of people, hundreds of millions of people who'd already had COVID, who didn't need to take any risk whatsoever from a novel vaccine? How is it that they get to privately decide to keep that information to themselves?
Okay,
and why, given that they did that, given that you remember the moment in history at which they were, not only were they disagreeing with us, which was a lie, they were gaslighting us. They were telling people like you that people like me were crazy. Well, I don't understand how you don't learn that lesson, or maybe you did, and that's why you're not getting any more COVID boosters.
No, I just think, again, it's more of a changing information landscape. We think this is what, we think masks work, masks don't work. Yeah, we should have masks.
Oh my
6
God.
feet distancing,
Michael,
close the schools,
Michael,
open the schools.
why do you think the
there's a lot of
information landscape changed?
Well, because the information was low to begin with, and then we got more information.
No.
I'm less conspiratorial that Paul Offit and his buddies all met.
They
said,
did,
we know,
according to Paul Offit.
I don't remember him saying that.
He's talked about it twice on video. He's described the meeting where he and Fauci and Collins and Walensky got together and they talked about the fact that natural immunity was superior, and they decided not to tell the public. That's from Paul Offit. You can go look at the video.
I don't remember that, but they're gonna lie to the public. They can't.
I always come back to this stuff. I always come back to COVID at the end of the day. It's been the single most dominant thing that happened in the last 5 years. It's the reason why I think, at least it's the predicate reason why I don't have a job doing what I used to do. Why I'm not out there helping round up illegal aliens. And you can't ever ask questions about it. And you can't ever assume that somebody was doing something intentionally with malice. And yet, they told us. They ran the information game on low information people who are willing to just accept new programming. And when they did, it was like, fine, this is what's happening. Now we're going to go after all the bad. Do you remember being demonized for that? In the same way you're going to find yourself demonized for showing up at church if you have white children and you are a white person by other white people. That's the most shocking part of it. And so any grievance or any actions taken against you is acceptable. And if you're out there trying to make this country follow the actual laws written by our Congress, if we were actually going to have Congress say there are certain things that allow you to come here, there are certain things that don't, you are within your parameters to stay. If you overstay, this is what happens. If you are committing crimes and you are a criminal alien, then you must be deported. We've actually normalized so many different marginalizations of regular people who just did regular stuff that the fringes are being celebrated. The wacko that decides to go in and tell you that he's going to celebrate a Somali mosque. And that's the most beautiful thing that happens in America. But to tie it all up to the place where we started, which was the Joe Walsh, let's go start this war, which is what he said. He wants to bring the war. Are people really ready for it? There's some people that are getting that message loud and clear. And they watch the inaction of government in things that are righteous and just, and they watched the government actually protect those doing things that were unjust, including being a participant itself, getting rid of folks from their positions in the military, in law enforcement, and we watched a bunch of law enforcement comply with it. It's a complicated issue because clearly it's not monolithic. But some people got that message loud and clear that now is an opportunity for them to take action. And I don't think necessarily that they represent a majority. But if we don't actually see Harmeet Dillon and company go after and use the force of the federal government to maintain a monopoly on force, barging into a church service and stopping it. Again, the FACE Act is pretty clear. It's through physical obstruction, it's through interference, it's through threat of force or violence. It doesn't have to actually involve force. But it's clearly on the table for people that are willing to come into a place where they're not welcome and they're not allowed. And they're justifying it under freedom, civil liberties? I don't think so. This guy is going to justify what he's saying under free speech too. I'm okay with the free speech part of it. It's the action. If you start showing up at people's homes when you physically present yourself as a target or you physically present yourself as a threat, there needs to be governmental action about it. Otherwise, we're going to get real ugly real quick here in this country.
If we dox these ICE agents, if we can dox these ICE agents, we need to go to their fucking houses. You understand me? I know that shit sounds crazy or cruel or like, Jesus, you're going to... Yes, I am. I am. This is war. Do you understand? We're at war with the government, and the branch of the government, our state, local police, troopers, guard, aren't doing anything. Fry, Walls, Peggy, Amy, Tina, none of them are doing anything. Angie Craig, Elon Omar, much as I like her, none of them are doing anything. None of them are doing anything. You want to come after our families? Okay, game on.
Who is his family in this story? By the way, he just said that Ilhan Omar was one of his favorite, as much as he likes her. That may be the craziest thing that I've heard. And people are getting in there and thinking, hey, my video's getting likes. It's real. It's valuable. Like people want to go do this thing. And you're seeing in small doses, people are. The question is, will they be held accountable? Will they be found? Will they be punished the way that the state's meant to? Will the state actually maintain its monopoly on violence? Or is it going to cede it to some random elements like that and further debase its legitimacy? And time will tell. That's what I got for today's show. That's what I'm seeing out there. And it's, obviously tainted by a little bit of travel, and I'm do my best to try to clean these up over the next couple days as we work. Working remote is not the same as working from my own space. I'll just tell you that much. While you guys are listening, if you guys are listening anywhere without the visuals, check out KyleSeraphinShow.com on Spotify. Give us a like if you're listening on Rumble. If you're listening over on YouTube, we'd appreciate that. If you're on Locals, thanks so much for being part of the community at KyleSeraphin.com. And wherever you're at, if you have not shared this with a friend, if you have not subscribed to the channel, we'd appreciate if you guys would do that. And we're going to have a little bit shorter shows while we're here, a little bit weirder setup, as you guys can tell. I've got some moving parts. Funniest thing I'll just tell you, this is not a palate cleanse, but it is sort of the way that Murphy's Law works. I have a microphone stand that will fit on any table anywhere, except the tables in the hotel that I've stayed in, where they where we have 4-inch thick tables for some reason. And so I don't have a clamp big enough to put it. So in any case, making do with what we got. We're going to make these road shows work as best they can. And I'm probably going to do some sit down interviews with some of the folks that are here, because there's some neat people I want to talk to. Anyway, hope you have a great day. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you guys again on the other side of this Tuesday.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.